Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make a curried cauliflower, sweet potato, and carrot soup with a bacon Gouda grilled cheese, and then we're going to work on some pasta dough using sourdough discard. So we're going to start out with our soup. I'm going to take one yellow onion and we're going to chop it up. So I'm just going to cut off both my ends. Then just make a quick slice to peel off this slippery outer skin. And then we're just gonna do a basic dice on it. So I'm gonna chop it in half and cut it to 5 times, and then just a basic, simple dice. And the same thing, split that half, cut it in about 5 slices, and then a small dice through here. So we've got our onions chopped up. I'm gonna add some olive oil to our pan, and I'm gonna pour it in there. I'm turning it on. I'm gonna add about a tablespoon or so. I'm gonna let that heat up, and then I'm gonna add in some minced garlic. There, and it looks like my little one's stirring. I just put him down for a nap. And put that in there. And we'll toss in our onions. He's gonna go back to sleep. He's been a little bit under the weather. We just laid down. Oh, and there you see the mailman as usual. Okay, we've got our onions, garlic, and olive oil, and we're gonna just stir it up to coat our onions and garlic with the olive oil. And now we're gonna prep our vegetables that are gonna go into our curried vegetable soup. So we're gonna use 1 whole sweet potato. So instead of peeling it, I'm just gonna chop each side, and then I'm gonna use my knife to peel it. This one got a little bit frozen. My fridge kind of froze over our cold spell last week here. And so a lot of my potatoes froze, which means they kind of get a little discolored, but they're still good. There we go. And then I'm gonna do kind of a smaller dice on them because I want them to kind of cook up fairly quick. So I'm cutting them to about this big, nice little bite-sized piece. And I'm gonna have those, I'll throw those in my onions in just a little bit. But we're gonna chop these up, and then we're gonna peel some carrots and chop them up as well in about similar sized pieces. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 carrots. I'm gonna do a quick peel on them. You could use already pre-washed peeled baby carrots if you wanted to. I just get these in bulk from Costco, but you do wanna peel these carrots. If you buy full carrots like this, always give them a peel before you cook up, because that outer dry skin doesn't have as nice of a flavor. And
you got a question. First off, how are you feeling today?
Much better.
And then what are you making?
I'm feeling much better. I feel like almost everybody is over it. My little two are still kind of clinging on. They're very whiny, very fussy, but as such with the stomach bug. And today we are making a curried cauliflower, sweet potato, carrot, like a curried vegetable soup with a bacon Gouda grilled cheese, and then we're gonna use some sourdough discard to make a pasta, and essentially we'll make the dough and we'll let it sit for a couple hours in the fridge. So I'm gonna chop up my carrots as well. Take the tips off. I'm gonna give this a good stir since my oil is heating up nicely. And I'm just gonna turn it down to about a 7 on my stove. I'll cut these in half because they're quite large, and then I'll give them a chop. And I'm trying to keep the sizing about the same as my sweet potatoes, although carrots take a little bit longer to cook than sweet potatoes do, since they're a little bit firmer of a vegetable. I will say, our dog Bruni, ever since the weather warmed up here and people started walking, our dogs keep barking at everybody walking by. Bruni, Loki, no barks. My dog Bruni can't hear, so even though I scream at her, she can't hear. Yes, you don't need to warn us about everybody who walks by. Okay, so I've got my carrots and my sweet potatoes chopped up. And I'm going to add some spices in here before I add in my vegetables. So I already added ginger. I'm now going to add, or not ginger, garlic. I'm now going to add in ginger paste. I'm going to give a good squeeze. It will probably be about a teaspoon of ginger paste. You could use dried ginger if you wanted to, but you'd probably only need about a half a teaspoon. That's a bit more spicy. And then I'm going to add in some ground turmeric. And I'm going to put in about a teaspoon of ground turmeric. And we're going to also use curry powder. And I'm going to add in closer to 2 teaspoons of curry powder. I love the flavor of curry powder, and I'm going to give it a good stir.
You got a question again about what are you making?
We are making a curried cauliflower, sweet potato, and carrot soup with a bacon Gouda and then some pasta. So right now we are kind of using the oil to open up our flavors in our spices. And now I'm going to toss in my carrots and my sweet potato. Always when you're making a soup or really like that, heat your spices up in the oil before you add the broth. That way they really come out and they also don't just rise and stay on the top level of our broth. So I'm going to stir this up. I'm going to turn my heat down just a little. I'm going to add a pinch more olive oil, just so I don't have any of my spices burn at the bottom. I'm going to give it a good stir. Get those guys who escaped. I'm going to let them saute in there, and then I'm going to cut up 4 tomatoes. I feel like the tomatoes just add a nice flavor to the broth, because it's going to be a lighter broth than, sometimes I do like a creamier, thicker curried soup, but this one's going to be more of a brothy curried soup, which it'll have just a little bit more delicate. And I think the tomatoes add just a nice little acidity to it. I'm just going to cut off where the vine pops in. I'm just using vine-ripe tomatoes, but you could also use plum tomatoes. Those work well. Or you could throw in a can of diced tomatoes. That would work as well. Toss these in. Perfect. And I'm just quartering them and then slicing them into pieces. They'll shrink down as they cook. And they'll also let out a lot of tomato juice. There we go. I'll give these a quick stir. And then I'm going to chop up some cauliflower. And see, right now the juices from the fresh tomatoes are going to help hydrate some of those spices as well. There we go. And I'm going to add in some garlic salt. And that's probably about a teaspoon or so. I'm going to give it a good stir. I'm just going to let these simmer. Bruni. Bruni, Bruni, Bruni. We're going to have to get a curtain there. Okay, and now we're going to use some cauliflower florets. And I'm just going to give them a quick chop. I'm going to use it'll probably be about 2 cups of cauliflower, not too much. And I'm going to give them a quick chop up because you got to think about, if we were roasting them on a pan, it'd be a little bit different, but we're going to be having them in a soup, so you don't want them anything bigger than what you can handle on a spoon. So just giving it a kind of a quick chop through so I don't have any massive pieces. And cauliflower kind of really is like a potato in the fact that it just absorbs any flavor that you really cook it in. And I find I love curried cauliflower, or like a lot of times I will toss cauliflower in olive oil and curry powder and salt. just to make a roasted cauliflower, and it's delicious. But cauliflower really just takes on the flavor of whatever broth or whatever you're cooking it in. So I've just got a kind of a coarse chop on my cauliflower. And I'm gonna toss this in here with our vegetables.
And what are you cooking?
We are making a curried vegetable soup. We have sweet potato, carrots, cauliflower, and tomatoes in here, and as well as onions, some garlic, ginger, turmeric, and curry powder. Give it a nice toss, and we're gonna add in about 4 cups or so. I'm gonna do 4 cups of water with a big heaping spoonful of chicken bouillon as my flavor. You could also use vegetable bouillon. But I really like to use bouillon over just a vegetable broth or a chicken broth, simply because you can add more flavor per less liquid. I find chicken broth or vegetable broth is very, very bland. And so I like it to have a bit more flavor and a bit more kick to it. And then I'm going to use a heaping spoonful in here. And this is going to give most of my the saltiness to my soup as well. And we're just going to stir it in. And now I'm going to turn up my heat and we're going to let it simmer. And then we can work on our grilled cheese and our sourdough discard pasta. There we go. And at the end, I will also, once it's simmered up and the vegetables have softened, I will toss in some diced or minced up cilantro, just to add a nice little kick to it. But we're gonna let that simmer. And now we will head over here to assemble our grilled cheeses. We're gonna use up the rest of our sourdough bread that we made the other day. And then after we do make our pasta, I'm gonna feed my sourdough so I can make another loaf tonight because we are running low. So I'm gonna see if I can get 2 sandwiches out of this. So 1. And there we go. So we've got our sourdough bread that we made from the other night, and we're just gonna coat one side of each of our slices of bread with some softened butter. And this will help it saute up nicely on our skillet. I don't put the butter on the skillet, I put the butter on the bread. That way my skillet also doesn't burn or smoke from it. And then we're gonna put a little bit of butter on each side. And then we're gonna assemble. We had some leftover bacon from a breakfast the other day, so we're gonna use that on ours, but you could also saute up bacon real quick if you wanted to. We'll assemble. I'm gonna be using just Gouda and leftover bacon. So really simple, easy grilled cheese, but I feel like bacon and Gouda go together so well. And Gouda is one of my favorite cheeses. And I'm gonna put my cheese on. And remember, when you're putting your cheese on, try not to have your cheese kind of go over the edge of your bread. If you do, it will just burn on your pan when you're sauteing it up. And so I just try to make it to where it doesn't really overlap my bread too much. And there we go. And now we're gonna layer our bacon. This is just original plain smokehouse bacon, and I'm not a big fan of thick cut bacon. I find thick cut is just really chewy and it doesn't crisp up nice. So if I'm using thick cut, it's only gonna be in soups or stews. But if I'm actually using it on a sandwich or something else, I will use just a thin or regular cut. And I'm a big proponent of just using the ingredients we have around our house or reusing everything. I don't like leftovers. I like reimagining my leftovers. So I'm not one to let things go to waste. And we're gonna just cover it up with a little bit more cheese. We're gonna place, and then I'm gonna give it a good smush to kind of push that bacon down. And we're gonna layer it right here as well. A bit more cheese. And then kind of smush to kind of crush that bacon down. And now I'm gonna turn my skillet on to a medium. Brunhilde, you have got to stop barking at everyone. Let me wash my hands, I got some butter on it. Here we go. Now, while these are sauteing up, we're gonna work on our pasta dough for our sourdough discard pasta dough. Well, let me give our stew over here, our curried vegetable soup, a quick stir. And now that it's really, the bouillon has been able to heat up, I'm gonna just taste the broth real quick before it cooks to see if I need to add any more spices. Perfect. I always taste your broth if you're making soup throughout, because as things cook, the flavors will come out more and certain vegetables will absorb more salt. So sometimes you're like, oh, it's perfect, and then, oh, it's not salty enough. That's because like a potato or cauliflower, those vegetables tend to absorb more salt and can take it out of your broth. Let's move this guy to the side. And we're gonna be working on our pasta dough. Put this over here. Put those there. Okay, so for our things, we're gonna be using 100 gram sourdough starter or discard. You can use either one. I'm gonna be using discard, and then I'm gonna feed it so I can make some more, some active starter for some sourdough tonight. Then we'll also be using 250 grams of unbleached all-purpose flour and 2 eggs. And we're actually gonna be doing this right here on the counter. It's just easier on the counter because you're gonna be kneading everything together. Before I use my discard, I'm gonna give it a good stir because I wanna make sure that I have all of the, sometimes when things ferment, liquid can come to the top. So let me get a bowl, and we're gonna measure out 100 grams of starter or discard. So I'm gonna measure 100 grams. And I find weighing it is much more precise. Ooh, perfect, look at that, 100 grams. And that way I can feed this in a little bit. So I've got 100 grams. And now we need 250 grams of flour. So I'm gonna get another bowl just so I can measure that out, and then I'm gonna dump it and make a well on my things. So put it on, make sure it goes back to 0. And this is gonna be probably close to like 1.5 cups of flour or so. So we'll start out. There we go, so that's 135. Close enough, 254. So again, those were like 3/4 cups for each one, so it's about 1.5 cups. And what you're gonna simply do is we're gonna pour our flour out here, and we're gonna make a well. So that's just digging kind of a hole right there in the middle. And we're gonna crack our eggs first into our sourdough mixture, mix it up, and then we're gonna put that in the well. And that's how you're going to incorporate it. And you wanna make sure you mix your eggs into the sourdough discard first. That way they're well incorporated. And that way your eggs will be completely incorporated into your pasta dough as well. So give it a nice stir. And this will give you a pasta that tastes delicious, great, that also is gut healthy for you. Sourdough is a lot of prebiotics and probiotics in it, so it's very healthy. Overfilled mine, that's okay. We're just gonna bring this flour around. And we're just gonna kind of pour in and mix, kind of folding each one into the bow. There we go. And then you're kind of incorporating it over and over. And the technique is really just kind of folding everything into the liquid. And this is gonna make a nice soft dough that you have to refrigerate for a good while. I got our soup over there is mixing, or is bubbling nicely, getting nice and tender. And I don't quite hear the sizzle on my frying pan yet, so that is nice. Once I hear the sizzle, I'll know to check it. And we're folding our dough in and out, and this is just gonna make a nice soft dough. And what you do is you refrigerate it for several hours. I say at least 4 hours. And that means it will allow the chance for the flour to hydrate itself. So I'm just folding back and forth.
So what are you making the dough for?
This is going to make pasta dough. So we're gonna make it for tonight's dinner. I think we're gonna make beef stroganoff. I'm gonna pull off some of this so I can use my spatula in just a second. And then we'll keep back to folding. So we're gonna make beef stroganoff and serve it with some noodles. Not quite yet. I didn't think I heard my sizzle yet. Okay, turn that up. And fold it in. The trick with pasta, if you don't want stiff pasta, you have to knead it a lot. The stretching of it really allows for the flour to hydrate and absorb it better and not become stiff. I'm gonna turn my pasta down over just a little bit and give it a quick stir. There we go. Nice thing about this soup is once you have it cooking, you don't have to do much until the very end. And I'm just folding into it, and then I'm using my palm to really push it down into my countertops. If you have like a tile countertop, you're gonna wanna do this maybe on like a cutting board if you have like one, because your pasta will get into your grout, and that's just really painful to clean. But if you have a nice stone surface or laminate, you could do it straight on there. Or if you have like the wood countertops, you could do it on. Okay, I think I'm beginning to hear my sizzle on my pan, which is telling me that my butter is melting and it's starting to crisp up. And my trick with my grilled cheese, the first time, I really wait until the butter has melted and we're starting to get a nice golden color, and then I flip. This allows for the cheese to thoroughly melt and heat through on the bottom. So this will not be my finished color, that's just what I'm gonna have for right now. There we go. They say for pasta, the ideal time that you're supposed to knead dough is a minimum of 7 minutes, but up to 15 minutes before you're done. That's a lot of kneading if you've ever done pasta dough. You could do it in your like stand mixer with your dough hook if you wanted, but I would still recommend taking it out and doing a little by hand, because the dough hook essentially just pushes it and stretches it, but it doesn't give you that really firm pull, which is what I'm kind of doing. I'm really like smushing it into my countertop. And that's just stretching the dough. And this will make sure you have a really delicate, soft pasta and not a stiff pasta. And you see it's incorporating together. And then you also need to let it sit and pull my sleeve up a little and let it hydrate in the refrigerator for, I say, 4 hours. You don't want to do it overnight. If you leave egg pasta in the fridge overnight, it will turn like a greenish brown. There won't be anything wrong with it. The just outside will just turn a funky color. So I like to make it around lunchtime, and then I use it for dinner. Okay, now we're gonna flip for the color and cook for the color this time. And I'm gonna turn it down because I don't want mine to thing. And also when you store your pasta, you wanna make sure it's covered up. So either put it in a Ziploc baggie or cover it with like saran wrap. And essentially You're just gonna mix. You can see how now my dough is coming together quite nicely. It's got a good, it's still breaking on the stretch. That's gonna all go away after sitting. If you try to roll it out now, you're gonna have, your pasta's gonna break a lot because the flour hasn't had time to hydrate. There we go. And nice. Fold in half. And again, my trick is to push and then fold. Push, fold. That allows all of it to really stretch. Good. They're cooking up nicely. Okay, I'm gonna get a Ziploc baggie for this to sit in, and I'll pop it in my fridge. But let me give my hands a quick wash because I have a little bit of dough. There we go. So we have our nice dough ball. And that was just made with 250 grams of all-purpose flour, 100 grams of starter or discard, and 2 whole eggs. And we just incorporated them until they were mixed nicely. Let's flip these guys. Nice. So this is more of the color I want, a nice crisping on it. And if you do like I cut my own bread, but if you have like a store cut, you'll have a much more even crisp because it will be much more even cut. Let's give this guy a good stir. Now I'm gonna get a bag. I'm just gonna put it in a sandwich bag. It should fit in there nicely. And then you're gonna wanna refrigerate it for about 4 hours before using. So it'll be ready for me to use tonight. I'm gonna push out any excess air because that will cause it to oxidize and give it that funky color. Let's turn that off and we can start getting ready for our final showdown. The last thing we need to do for our soup is we are going to do a quick chop up of some cilantro. So I'm just gonna take this cauliflower scraps to the side. I'm gonna use fresh cilantro, which cilantro works really well in like Indian, Middle Eastern foods. I know most people think of it as just in Mexican foods.
What kind of soup?
This is a curried cauliflower, sweet potato, and carrot soup using curry powder, turmeric, and ginger. Pull those off since they're done cooking. And now we're just gonna do a quick kind of mince of cilantro. I just grabbed a big handful of it, and then we're gonna mix this in at the very last, which will just let out another aromatic flavor to it. And then we're just gonna put in a touch of cream. You could use coconut cream if you have it. That works well with curries, it pairs well. But for some reason, I never seem to have coconut cream on hand. So I'm gonna give it a nice, toss this in as well. I'm gonna turn my thing off. A nice swirl of cream, probably about a 1/3 cup. You don't need much, just enough to kind of cut through some of the spices, give it a nice creamier flavor to it. Coconut cream also works great for that, or coconut milk. And our curried vegetable stew is ready, as well as our Bacon Gouda. So, put this guy on our yummy Bacon Gouda, on our sourdough bread that we made the other day. And then I'm gonna scoop up some of our curried vegetable soup. There we go, and I'll have a nice fragrant broth to it. There. And I will cut our grilled cheese in half so you can see the melt.
I got a question. Is this recipe on your TikTok?
We will download all of our long videos on it, and we're in the process of making some recipe cards.
But the long form video.
Long form's on it. There's also a link to our other page that also has all of our videos on there for you guys to watch through and get. I always try to tell you the measurements as I'm going through and cooking and all the steps. We'll do a little dip, my favorite part. Delicious. Well, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We try to do live cooking shows for you guys once or twice a day. Again, we post all of our videos in about an hour or so. We should have this posted up there. You can click on the link in our page as well. And then we are working on some recipe cards and stuff like that so you guys can have some quick, easy access to it. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe.